All right, everybody, what's going on? My name's Tate Canyon. We are here with Round 2 Magazine, and today we got a really special guest. We are here with Slobby Robby. Robby, introduce yourself, my man.
Yo, what up, man? Slob Rob with no job. Your main pillow stain. Your mom's favorite friend. All that stuff, man. I'm here in my store, Generation Cool, Tucson, Arizona.
Hell yeah. All right, man. So to start off, we're going to get off with like the super simple basics. How did you get the name Slobby Robby, and where did that come about? Where did the alias come from?
Oh, well, that's a good question. So mostly from early social media, like MySpace. Just, messing around, and I had different nicknames, and I called myself Slob Rob and Slobber and all this. And then one day, this girl started calling me Slobby Robby on MySpace, and it just stuck, and she wrote me a poem. And I met her one night, and I'm like, yeah. And she's like, you're Slobbert, from MySpace, right? And I'm like, yeah. She's like, I'm going to write you a poem. And so I wake up in the morning, and on my MySpace wall, she had written me like a nice little prose. And it said, Slobby Robby, he's my favorite hobby. If I was a hotel, he could sleep in my lobby. And then I changed my MySpace name to Slobby Robby, and all my homies thought it was funny, and it was almost kind of a joke, like my homies didn't call me that. My homies called me Rob. But like a lot of girls and a lot of people, we were on the nightclub scene, so a lot of these people really did start calling me Slobby. And you can't choose your own nickname, man. It's usually what latches on with the public. So that was an early social media nickname. It's also a famous Garbage Pail Kid character. So I ended up using that as like my photo, and I ended up sort of branding myself with this rhyming name and this Garbage Pail Kids motif. And that was early on in the MySpace days. So by the time I hit Facebook and Instagram, I wasn't really having to think about what my handle was. You know what I mean?
That's super fire. I love that. You don't get to pick your own nickname. It's just given to you. It's like this God-given thing. It just shoots down, and that's who you are for the rest of the time.
Literally.
So kind of going down into it, you're a man of style, bro. You're always dripped out. So to start off into like getting into like how you got into that personal style, can you give us a fit breakdown of what you got on right now?
Yeah, I mean, this is, I like to, for the most part, I like to say that I've been wearing the same type of stuff since middle school and high school, because I still, although I couldn't afford Gucci and some of this stuff, in high school, there was the stuff I liked. But, I always liked beanies, ever since I was skating in 7th, 8th grade. In the winter, it can be really cold here in the morning, and then it can get really hot in the day. So I'd wear a beanie in the morning and then take it off by afternoon. So I've always worn beanies, always liked big glasses like Cazals and Lokes, if you will, like gangster glasses. So I always wore big glasses. I was known for wearing big Lokes in middle school. And then, after high school, when I started like making more money and whatever, I started like getting more into jewelry. But for instance, a baseball jersey is something I've been wearing since high school. I love baseball jerseys. I love sort of that, whatever, that classic idea of sort of streetwear, sort of like a NWA, socks, Raiders, LA Kings. I come from that sort of, especially this outfit sort of comes from that, late 80s LA school of style. They got a little Dapper Dan in me. I like a good, what is Dapper Dan called, this logomania? I like a good monogram. But then I like modern stuff, and I'm into like shit like, I got the Yeezy foam runners on the feet. I like futuristic one-piece shoes. I like weird footwear. So I'd say my outfit today is sort of a combination of like LA street shit and a little bit of futuristic,
That's so wild, man. I feel like I'm like looking into a mirror a few years into the future, because it literally like is the exact drip I'd be wearing on a regular day. Like I'm in the round 2 uniform right now, but it's what you're wearing isn't too far off from my everyday fit. And going back to nicknames, you're wearing the 8-ball chain right now, which is super tough. Wanted to point that out because most of my nickname's T8 because my name's spelled out Tate, T8,
Right.
just like it. So I wanted to shout out the 8-ball chain because that's definitely a piece of me. So super tough to fit. That's really hard.
I think stuff like pop culture references, and again, this whole like idea of like pop mania and logo mania, and I really embrace that. I got from Wu-Tang to Versace to Mercedes. I got this old like bootleg street like New York homemade Nike ring, but ever since I was a kid, and I was into skating and shit, the 8-ball has always been like a really cool sort of symbol, So I made this myself with the real authentic Gucci chain too. So I got
that's
a little
hard.
DIY. There's a little DIY to my C's,
That's hard. I fuck with that. So you mentioned the bootleg. And we'll talk about like the store and the show in just a little bit because you brought it up. I got to bring it up because growing up, when I was watching Slobby's World in your show, you were such an advocate for bootleg and knowing the difference between real, fake, what would you call it? The realistic fit, the Fugazi, something close.
Yeah, so you're running a whole gamut there of authentic. There's stuff like fan-made stuff, and there's bootleg, and then there's replica, and then there's just straight fake, And so there's this whole like sort of spectrum of stuff, especially when it comes to designer or with anything really.
Mm-hmm. And you were such a big advocate for that, where before I watched your show, I would hear fake and it had such a negative connotation, or bootleg had such a negative connotation, but hearing you talk about it on the show, you also like celebrated it and loved it, and always like shown love to the designers and all the stuff outside of it, because you showed like a very clear distinction between fake and bootleg and what was beautiful and what was a clear ripoff. So
right.
Magazine, can you explain to the people like your version of kind of what you believe in and what that kind of brings to the table for real, fake, all that bootleg?
Yeah, so I mean, I go way back in screen printing, which is a very DIY screen printing is a very like skate and punk rock practice at its roots, in a way. So I took screen printing class in 5th grade at summer camp, and I took the asterisks from the Red Hot Chili Pepper logo, and then I took the Stussy lettering, like the classic wide graffiti one, his old one, and I put Stussy with Red Hot Chili Peppers, and I made a shirt. Came home from camp, didn't really think anything of it, was riding my BMX around, and some college dude pulled over in his car, and he's like, "Hey, bro, where'd you get that shirt, bro?" And I'm like, "Oh, I made it." And he's like, "Can I buy it from you?" And I'm like, "No." But that was an early moment for me when I realized that you can like, have fun with it. Number one, that you can make your own stuff and make it whatever you want. And there's something, we all had like a toy that we couldn't afford, so we like drew it out of cardboard, or like I made like bases, I made sewer stations for my Ninja Turtles made out of cardboard because I didn't own the sewer play set. So this was sort of like an early version of that, making clothes that I wanted or that I saw. And then, as I got older in my late teens, early 20s, I started looking on eBay and finding stuff like bootleg Nike hoodies and bootleg Jordan stuff. And I'm thinking, well, why is it Air Jordan, but it's printed on a Fruit of the Loom, So these were early ideas that I had. And I was like, damn, I'm kind of down, I don't know this is before the terminology or the vernacular was really there, but I was down, and it wasn't always because of the price, Some of these like bootleg Nike and old Flight stuff can be more expensive than some of the Nike pieces from the era. And the same to be said with Gucci, Gucci went back and used all their bootleg designs for real designs years later because of people like Dapper Dan and myself. If anything, I was early on the I don't give a fuck train when it comes to wearing whatever you want, and especially being unique. Sometimes wearing one of one, custom, fan-made, bootleg, if you will, is a good way to be unique, especially back then, So vintage bootleg, I think, is the key. I love, the modern boot sort of era that we're in now. I love it. Love all the Marvel stuff, all the Marvel, modern boot wrap tees. I could name dozens of homies that make great modern boot stuff, but I like the vintage bootleg stuff. And of course, bootleg Bart, it's something within the bootleg genre that became its own subgenre. So there's a lot to it, but there's an art to it also. And I love the look. I love the collectability. And I love that whole movement and that energy of like, I'm going to put a fucking Fred Flintstone Grateful Dead shirt and call it Grateful Fred. I have it right here on my wall, and it's Fred Flintstone on acid. Like, I love that where two things can meet, through a bootleg process.
Totally. No, I think that's really well said. And just kind of moving forward with the store, Generation Cool, you're talking about a lot of really dope old vintage pieces. And with your store, that's like basically exactly what you specialize in, is 80s and like the super vintage stuff, just aside from like, maybe what's in round two, which is like maybe some higher end Supreme stuff or some different terms of like what vintage streetwear is. So for the people at home, could you explain kind of what the store is and what your profession is in finding like the 80s vintage?
Yeah, the store is a direct reflection of me. I celebrate, and I come from the school of a true boutique, where a boutique is a smaller, very specialized store. So in Paris, I went and visited Europe a lot in my early 20s, and I visited very specialized boutiques. A woman who just makes all bows. A guy who sells all hats, a hat store, just ball caps, just hats, and that's so cool to me. So in the sense we're a true boutique, in the other sense we actually encompass a lot of different things because we're so like pop culture, collage, like blah, but we are 80s and 90s boutique at our core because that's my life. I was born in 1980. So the 80s was my childhood. In the 90s, I was more into like Polo and Wu-Tang Clan and, selling drugs and that whole culture, like, East Coast rap, Mobb Deep, as opposed to like when some other people were getting into Pokemon and Power Rangers. The 90s for me is a little bit more of like my lifestyle now. But the store is a direct reflection of me in every way, and in that everything I sell is something that I was either into or collected, or something I wanted, or something my homies had, or something that I admire from those two eras, that I remember. So it's rare that I deal with anything that's not true to me. This is why we don't have a lot of Carhartt, double knees, because that doesn't mean anything to me. That has no connection to me, so it wouldn't really be in our store.
That's super fair, and that's a very good, comparison to like exactly what was, popular in that era as well. So talking about the curation of the store, I mean, there's a lot of pieces that are behind you right now that are probably extremely hard to get. So maybe for the people at home, and maybe giving a little bit of sauce to people that are trying to be in your shoes, how do you source stuff like that? How do you keep the shop consistently filled with the crazy shit that you got on the shelf?
Yeah, well, vintage has been through so many phases that I think of what a lot of people would consider what we have to be like lower top shelf, or like upper mids maybe. Stuff that I used to call mids is now like kind of our bread and butter, and stuff that most people would consider top shelf probably is not as much of our bread and butter, mostly because we want affordable clothes. So we range pretty heavy in the 40 to 200 price point, and that goes really well for us. I'm looking at a few $500 tees up here, but we'll leave the $2,000 shirts to the faded, whatnots of the world, because that's not really my cup of tea. Even when we were doing the Marvel tees, because I love Marvel, we weren't really charging those really high Marvel tee prices because we kind of, in a way have stuck to the same thing, for better or for worse. Financially, we probably stuck to our guns a lot more than most of these stores, because we kept our prices the same generally, and we didn't really succumb to like the hype, So I wouldn't really carry a Kanye $1,000 rap tee, and I never have carried something like that. As far as sourcing and keeping things consistent, having good relationships. So I have a great friends and people and family and people, business partners and people who find stuff, and we have a great relationship. We have a great relationship with our customers who bring us stuff still every day, buy, sell, trade, that Buffalo exchange, really straightforward model, trade high, cash out low. And frankly, the internet and social media, it's to thank for, if I feel like I'm lacking anything, I definitely have, thousands of resources to reach out and fill in when we need special collections, curate special things. Phoenix Suns had us up there for a Phoenix Suns versus Lakers game, and I curated a bunch of vintage stuff for the Phoenix Suns. So I was able to reach out to followers and people I follow and source. But I would say most of our stuff comes from my pickers and the relationships I've built with pickers and our customers who bring us stuff on a daily basis. All the best stuff I have gotten in the last 2-3 weeks were all from walk-ins still.
That's sweet.
And not other vintage sellers trying to wax me. Straight walk-ins, people selling stuff from their house, the good stuff.
That's fire. That's super fire. So talking about vintage in all the stores, I mean, I wasn't there, but I'm super familiar that you and Round 2 had a really great relationship in the early days when we were, still on Melrose, still in Virginia in the heyday. You have any good memories we could throw out there of, you and Round 2 early on?
Oh gosh, a lot, because we opened within a week of each other, the original Virginia store and us. And they do say that a lot of really good ideas, or sometimes really good designs or certain movies, will come in sets of twos. And I think there was a lot of stores actually that opened around that 2012 to 2014 that are still some of the OG stores that were OG dealers that kind of all came into this concept, if you will, around the same time. But I would say Round 2 was one that I was very much more aware of. I saw Round 2 and I'm like, wow, that's cool. I saw that they had a gallery and that they were sort of archiving stuff, and I'm like, oh, that's cool. I saw that they were doing stuff a little different than us, like having Supreme and Bape or whatever, and maybe more skate stuff. And I was like, oh, wow, that's cool. That made me think about us having different elements. As far as Round 2 LA, that's when the floodgates opened. I think that's when everything changed between the Round 2 show, the Round 2 store opening on Melrose, and my show. I'm sorry, but that was a lot of people learned about shit through those channels. Early on, as far as me, I had never seen too many people that were as passionate about it as Sean and I were. And so to see, I started realizing early on with my store that I was sort of the face of the franchise, and I was getting more followers in my store. So to see someone like Sean, when they moved to LA, for him to sort of be blowing up as his own persona, and I don't mean that in a shallow LA way, but in a very unique and actually organic way. And I'm like, who's this guy, And so when I came, I'm not really carrying the kind of person who I want to meet this person. I just make friends easily. So I feel like I just went to Round 2 and and he was there, and we were just both into the same stuff. Old polo, cool toys, being unique, being enthusiastic, finding stuff, and sort of being at a cutting edge of something that we probably didn't even know was going to be a fashion revolution, I don't think that's an overstatement. So we were sort of the first ones to start setting prices for bigger high-end stuff. Round 2 had the Polo NASA space jackets, and Mac Miller bought him, and Sean was setting the bar for what that cost. I had $250 bootleg Gucci sweatshirts, and I was selling them to Black Eyed Peas, and I'm like, yeah, those are $500 now, and people were like, wow, $500 for a bootleg, and I'm like, yep. But nobody was using eBay comps, bro. I don't even know if eBay had sold the sold auction, on your phone app yet. I don't even know if all that data was available those first few years. We weren't using the word vintage, we were just cool stores. And I didn't really start thinking of myself as quote unquote vintage until a couple years in, when it just became the buzzword for our type of store, right? And so to go to LA and go to round two and go to Rose Bowl, and it wasn't my first time going to Rose Bowl, but it was my first time going to Rose Bowl and like competing with somebody like Sean, or maybe a friendly competition where we're just seeing each other there. And that was new, I think, for everybody. But I think Sean and I were people that people looked up to, and that people probably aspired to be like us, because we were our own bosses, and we were good parents, and we were good family men, and we were making a name for ourselves, and we were making a career for ourselves by doing something that we were having fun with, and that we were super authentic and actually wearing and collecting the stuff ourselves. And that's a big deal, is that Sean and I were collectors. And if you're just in it to be a reseller, it's just, I feel like it takes half the fun out of it, right? The other half is feeding your kids and living off of it, and that's great. But the other half, where you actually enjoy it, I think that's something that brought him and I a lot of good fortune and positive energy, and that was a very authentic version of what everybody else is now. So Sean and I were the authentic OG versions of that.
No, I totally agree, dude. That's very, very well said, because at the end of the day, why both the shows, the round two show and Slobby's World, performed so well was because you guys were like a completely organic peephole into what this niche was, which is vintage. But like you said, when you guys were making the show, or when you guys were first starting out, it was just what you were interested in. So now that there's like these buzzwords, vintage and all this stuff that are popping up around now, it's like you guys have been interested in what this buzzword has now become. So just people being immersed in what you guys are into and seeing it kind of be fulfilled and set right there. Like you guys kind of have like this path now set. But in those
were the good old days, these were the good old days. And, I think my show was a lot more, it's a reality show, quote unquote, but it was a lot less organic of a show than round two show. But the fact of the matter was, you had a real person in me, a real person in Sean, Luke, Chris, and people on the show. These were real people making a real living off of having fun and selling stuff that they also participated in and wore. And I think that was I hate to say the good old days or the golden era, but that was the real deal. And it was before people did it. People started skating to be a skater at one point, right? And those were posers. So Sean and I come from the pre-poser era.
No, totally. I definitely agree with that, because
of vintage.
Yeah, the one thing with your show that, like I said at the very beginning of the interview, was everything you were interested in and everything you talked about wasn't just I got this piece. It's like you screamed in the camera, pointed, and let people know like why you specifically cared about the thing and why you were really excited to bring this to this person, because it was a mission and you knew the mission and you knew in your head, and correct me if I'm wrong, that like this is where this piece belongs, because you knew the Lord, right. You knew why it should go that place. And if you see someone react a certain way, maybe they don't deserve to have that piece, or maybe you raise the price a little bit because like the rightful belonging place to the piece.
Yeah, we're the original gatekeepers.
Yeah, it's the true carousel though. It's like
we didn't do a good job of gatekeeping this business though, my bro. I have a feeling everybody caught on.
I have a feeling as well, especially doing this magazine and trying to show, more of the sauce. Like you guys were the early people that really showed people like how to sell online, because beforehand it was just what it was, like it's retail. But seeing Slobby's World and seeing round two show,
yeah,
those literal two only examples you have.
Yeah,
not like some other sneaker stores that we won't mention, but it's like the real authentic version of selling at retail from a behind the scenes thing, whether it was on TV or on YouTube.
Sure.
Very, very in parallel, where like people showing exactly what they wanted. And
yeah,
but Yeah,
It
people.
was fun. That was fun.
It was one of the things where it's just like you got that sweet opportunity to put it on a streaming platform, and Sean was just like, "Yeah, screw it, we'll do it on our own." But
Yeah.
still,
But I was on that show
believe it.
too, and they were on my show too, and it was a great time. And in real life, man, I was showing up, and they were like holding Versace shirts for me, and like, you know, we were all selling clothes to each other back then. It was real.
That's super fire. And you mentioned Rose Bowl as well. For the people back at home, can you explain just a little bit on like what that is for a reseller? Because the Rose Bowl is a really, really big event. And like you said, there is a little bit of like friendly competition. But for people that aren't too aware, what is the Rose Bowl and what does it mean to a vintage reseller? And how big of a deal is that for you guys to kind of get that opportunity to do that for the day?
Well, I think that Rose Bowl, first of all, it's a flea market. And what you guys call in California a flea market, what we call in Arizona a swap meet. And it's outdoor, and I like that. I come from Arizona where we have outdoor swap meets. So I had always been going to Kobe's swap meet in San Diego. And I had been to Rose Bowl once or twice in my early 20s, but it was a lot to sort of digest, and I didn't really have like a local LA person showing me the ropes. But when I started coming back in around 2013, 14, 15, and started coming out to LA a lot to like what we call buying, what all the dorks call sourcing now. We used to just call that a buying trip, right?
Yeah.
So I'd go on a buying trip, and I'd go to LA, and you'd see Sean at Rose Bowl, you'd see so-and-so at Rose Bowl, you know, you'd see some of these great Japanese sellers and buyers. But if anything, it was a great place for me to find some top shelf stuff and really like exotic and sort of fancier stuff to bring back to Arizona. And then while I'm there, I was always able to sell some stuff around too, like some Supreme or stuff I had come up on the side. So it was just good business. And for anybody who doesn't know, Rose Bowl is just a big flea where one side of it is almost all clothes. Another side is really cool for like toys and collectibles and housewares. So I love it for both things. It can be really high end, you know, but you're also going to find some really rare stuff. And if you're somebody who was like Sean in his heyday, you would go at 4 a.m. and it was almost a competition to see how early we could all get in, you know. People were pretending to be sellers. People were, I'll be honest with you, bro, we hopped the fence, dog. They wouldn't let us put it on Netflix, but there was one episode where I was going to hop the fence to try to get there earlier before Sean, and I brought a carpet, and I threw it like military prison style. I threw a carpet over the fence, and I got in at like 3:30 in the morning. Then the Rose Bowl freaked out and wouldn't let us use it.
That's so fire. What the hell? I can't believe they didn't let you guys use that. That's brilliant footage. That's basically like making it happen by any means necessary.
The Rose Bowl is the grandfather of all fleas, and it can be a little bit hype-y, overpriced, oversaturated, whatever you want to call it. I still would say that it is still the great grandfather of all fleas in the U.S. In the U.S. for sure. It's the biggest, that's for sure.
Hell yeah. So moving forward, can we get 2025 fashion predictions of what you think is going to be like the big style of this year?
Ooh, wow. So I think that we're already kind of seeing this, number one, back to basics in a certain way, where I think people are going to lean into like really simple stuff without graphics. And as we've seen with like Russell afterhoods and Champion afterhoods and all this really cool like older athletic wear, I think we could see that going into like a lot of matching sets and one pieces. I think like oversized mechanic suits and sweats where the sweat top and bottoms are matching. I think that's sort of in a weird way. It's very primitive, but it's also very future. So I'm seeing a lot of future primitive, which is kind of what I was talking about with mixing all the new, again, postmodernism, if you will. And so I think in the scope of postmodernism, we're going to see that, some more, anything that seems futuristic, like a one piece, like a pullover, or weird like silver hoods and silver metallics and gold metallics that feel futuristic. I think that people are probably going to care about brands less and less. I think we've seen a lot of DIY and one of one and cut and sew, and I think that'll go away. I think that really simple cartoon will come back with like smaller, just a Mickey head or just I'm a big fan. I always have been, but I think this will come back into the like sort of scope of popularity, but really simple, one small image on a shirt. Not that it ever went away, but as far as being super trendy, I think we're through camo and all that bullshit, thank God. And I think that we're going to get back into, in a way, not that I'm going to get into this or that my story would necessarily change, but indie sleeves and sort of the MySpace era. I know I mentioned MySpace before, but, sort of like I'm seeing a lot of collared stuff. I'm seeing a lot of prep. So prep polo, but not on the hood side, back to the prep side of polo. And I'm seeing a lot of like collars coming out of a sweater and, and people getting back into plaid. And preppy coming back a little bit more and like that. Again, like when you're on MySpace, you would probably have like a graphic tee and just some really like simple pants and like an oversized hat that's silly, like a trucker hat with nothing on it, or a trucker hat with just one little thing on it. Almost like early skateboard P. Pharrell, I could see that. And as far as just things that I think I'm seeing personally right now, hella Tommy and polo and button up and collared and stuff, with I just put out a really nice polo jacket with a corduroy collar and it's like wool on the inside, but it's not too old, sort of back to that 90s prep, but through the vehicle of Tommy, polo, Nautica, and all that. And in a weird way, the stuff that Sean and I were on in like 2012 and 13, rugbies, you look at rugbies, Chief Keef rugbies are back. I would say if I had a more bolder prediction, I'm leaning toward less beat up stuff and less raggedy and less like beat and like all these holes and showing skin and maybe like bigger, thicker, more, heavier stuff like an all black, shirt with all black sweats. Almost back to Hood by Air, aesthetic. I would almost think we're going to go back to something very, very straightforward, like the early days of streetwear, That's
why he's Slobby Robby, the man of style, because, man, I definitely agree. That's like...
Bro, on my show, I said, on Mr. Throwback Store, that big design houses were going to start working with the four major sports. And then what happened? Gucci and Polo and Major League Baseball all started working together. And you know what I mean? All NBA started working with Louis Vuitton. So...
Putting it out there. Just put it out there.
Hey, bro, if you talk enough shit, you're going to be right sometimes.
That's super fair. Well, just because I'm guilty, man, I'm wearing the camos. So give me a few things that absolutely need to stop in 2025 so I could take some notes.
Hey, bro, my rule number one is have fun and do whatever you want. Camo will actually never go out of style. So I think you know what I mean, though, as far as like the college kid's uniform of camo pants,
Hell
Camo will never go out of style, and it's never been out. It's never not been cool,
Hell yeah. Anything that you think just personally should stop in 2025?
I mean, I'm a hater, in general, so I could go on and on, but like the crop shirts and the belly and like, crop shirts with the big pants and showing your belly button, like hey, look, I'm overweight, so maybe, I wish I could rock a crop, but I don't know if I would. I'm sick of it, and I really am not a big fan of people cutting shirts. I like to maintain a t-shirt's original integrity, and I have no dog in the fight other than I don't like when people chop the bottom of a shirt off. It hurts me, hurts my feelings.
Well, I'm gonna end this interview with hurting your feelings a whole ton, because if anybody would like to get an issue of Round 2 magazine, every single magazine is cut from a vintage t-shirt. So if you would like a t-shirt that has been
Hey, no, you know what? Recycling is different. I like it. Recycle, and we good. I'm on board with that. Everything in my store, bro. We reuse all our tags. I don't let anything go. That's why I have so much back room, because we like to reuse everything. So I fuck with it.
That's so fire. Well, if you guys want to get a copy of the magazine with Slobby in this interview, make sure to go grab it. round2magazine.com, Round2 Magazine on Instagram. Robby, is there anything that we could end this with to let the people know where to find you, what's going on, what's happening?
Yeah, I got my YouTube channel, Generation Cool TV, is launching at the end of the month. We're going to do top 10s from Slobby's World. We're going to bring back old Slobby's World content and a bunch of new stuff where I do stuff like toy reviews, hat reviews, getting more specific about really cool, items that I maybe slept on from the past. And a lot of meta glasses and Ray-Ban stuff where I'll be going to fleas and I'll be able to talk some shit and have some banter with people at flea markets. So a lot of stuff coming on YouTube. Shout out to Round 2, Sean, Chris, Luke. I don't really fuck with most people, but I fuck with Sean, Chris, and Luke from day one. And a lot of people didn't fuck with me in LA back then either. So I want to thank them. And no joke, shout out to Round 2 in general.
I appreciate you, gang. I'm a huge fan of you and everything you've been encapsulating and showing off for the past few years, ever since I found the show. So I want to thank you for having me and letting me ask a few questions to you. Have a good rest of your day, man. This has been Round 2 Magazine. I appreciate it so much, gang.
Hell yeah, brother. Peace.
Peace. Have a good one, man.